Losing Piper. Guys, there's something we have to tell you, announced my mom as my sister and I took a seat on the couch. Oh, what is it? Asked Brecken, my younger sister, with a childlike excitement. She assumed the announcement would be something pleasant, like some sort of present. I knew better. Conversation starting with those words was never good. What? I pondered, an unnerved expression on my face. We have to put Piper down, this Friday, she responded, my whole world changing as she did. I sat there, my mouth ajar and tears welling up in my eyes. I couldn't even begin to fathom what my mom had just said. We had to put my dog down this Friday? I opened my mouth in some attempt to respond, but I was too taken aback to string together a sentence. There was a hurricane of thoughts spinning through my mind as I tried to imagine a world without Piper. For some people, losing a dog might not have such a massive effect, but Piper and I had always had a special connection. When I had just been brought back from the hospital, not even a week old, Piper had already been with my parents for just over a year. I've been told the same story countless times of how my parents set me down in the living room, swaddled up in a blanket, and watched in awe as Piper trotted over to me with a treat in her mouth. Ever so carefully, she rested it next to my head, as if she was presenting me with a welcome to the family gift. From that point on, my bond with Piper only grew stronger. This wasn't, however, the first time I had been in distress over Piper's health. She'd been horrendously sick on and off again the past 3 years, and had been dangerously close to death before. We had recently discovered, much to our dismay, that she had even developed lung cancer. Still, the news was incredibly startling. I felt like a bucket of ice water had been thrown into my face, my eyes wide, and my face tense with shock. So we're going to put her down Friday while you guys are at school, declared my mom, in an obvious attempt to hold back the tears that were slowly pushing their way out. But if she's doing really bad, her voice trailed off, not wanting to say what we were all thinking, that we might have to lose Piper even earlier than we expected. I glanced over at Piper for the first time since my mom had begun talking. It was so easy for me to flash back to 4 years ago and see the exuberant puppy she once was, her eyes twinkling and full of life. Looking at her now, however, was an entirely different story. That familiar twinkle was gone, and Piper stood there, gasping desperately as she tried to fill her lungs with air. It was that moment when I realized we were doing the right thing, that putting Piper down would be the ethical thing to do. Once my mom had finished talking, I exited the living room and trudged slowly up the steps, no longer able to bear the pitiful stares of my family members. After dragging myself into my room, I raised my head and gazed at the clock. 10:12 on a school night, and I was still awake? I began counting out on my fingers how many hours I had until Piper was gone, until I could never see her again for as long as I lived. I immediately regretted doing so once I realized with a start that the time would come in less than 2 days. By this time on Friday, Piper, my thus long lifelong companion, would be long gone. I laid flat on my back in bed, covers draped carelessly over me, and stared at the ceiling. My entire body ached with agony over Piper. I knew perfectly well that self-pity would do me no good, that I needed to go to sleep. But how could I sleep with the burden of a dying pet was there, crushing me as if I were Atlas and the whole world rested upon my shoulders? I had no idea how long I had been lying there, wide awake, when I was suddenly ripped from my thoughts by the thump, thump, thump of my mom climbing the hardwood stairs. As soon as I heard her, I knew exactly why she was coming. I had heard Piper's ragged breathing all night, and knew that she was in terrible condition if they could be heard all the way from my room on the second story. As her footsteps grew louder and she neared my door, I was exceedingly conscious of the reason to why she was coming. We had to put Piper down tonight. I knew it was true, yet my entire body, every single ounce of me was screaming, "No, it can't happen. I won't lose Piper tonight." But as soon as my mom opened her mouth to let the words pour out, my suspicions were confirmed. Right now, I inquired, my voice stuttering as I felt the previous rounds of sobbing coming back. Yes, I have to take her to the pet hospital right now, she replied, her eyes full of pity as she surveyed my face, searching for clue as to what my reaction was to this. Wearily, I shut my eyes and sucked in a deep breath of air. It was really happening. I was losing Piper. I thought I would have had more time, that I would have been able to make her last days the most preeminent of her whole life. But no, this was the last time I would ever see Piper. Are you going to wake Brecken? I inquired, after I had made my way sluggishly down the stairs and into the living room, where Piper was on the couch with my dad, pacing around restlessly and breathing hard. My mom briefly made eye contact with my dad before responding, a look of genuine concern passing between them. I should probably go and get her. She'll be mad if she doesn't get to say goodbye, sighed my mom, her face tense as she contemplated whether or not to wake my little sister. With that, she spun around and once again climbed up the stairs, where my little sister was sleeping peacefully, leaving me and my dad on the couch, Piper swaddled up like a newborn baby in the immense mass of brown blanket that I cradled in my arms. My dad sat there, gazing upon me and Piper with sympathetic eyes as a startling cry drew up our attention to the staircase. Brecken stood there, hair astray and cheeks flushed with combination of anger and melancholy. She let out loud, gasping cries as she descended the stairs, my mom behind her with one hand on her back. She gradually made her way over to Piper, where she stroked her back in between sobs. At that moment, Piper turned her head so she was looking right at me with her big black eyes, which had somewhat begun to cloud over as she'd aged. Though she could speak no words, I knew exactly what she was telling me. It's time. Can I carry her to the car? I asked my mom, barely managing to snuffle out the words. Miraculously, my parents had succeeded in somewhat calming my sister down, and I knew what was coming next. Like it or not, my mom had to take Piper, and I might as well get one last goodbye before she did. Sure you can, she responded, flashing me a quick smile through her tears. Ever so carefully, I stood up and lifted Piper into my arms, letting the blanket fall to the floor beside me. I held her like she was $1,000,000 diamond, though she was worth much more than that, at least to me. She nuzzled her head into me as I set off for the garage door. The front seat of my mom's minivan was already set up for Piper, complete with a blanket draped lightly over the seat for her to rest on. Well, I thought, at least she gets one last car ride. I felt the tears rushing back again as I began to recall endless memories of Piper sticking her head out the car window, her plush white fur flapping in the wind. Memories. That's all I had left of Piper now. It wasn't until my mom backed out of the garage, Piper riding shotgun, that I realized I had just held my dog for the last time.